A month ago, my daughter-in-law stood in the middle of the living room and threw this sentence in my face. "You've ruined our lives. Get out." And my son, he stood right behind her and didn't say a word. I packed my things in silence, leaving the house I had helped pay to build, stepping out into the winter cold and under the vacant stares of the people who once called me Mom. A month later, the police called me. Not because they were worried about me, not because my son and his wife felt any remorse, but because the only grandson who still loved me had disappeared. And this time, they couldn't use me as an excuse anymore. If you've ever been treated like a stranger in your own family, if you've ever had silence used as a weapon to cover up cruelty, then you need to hear this story. And if you can share this in the comments. Is family a place where you are loved, or a place you endure until you just can't take it anymore? That morning began like any other in the 5 years I'd been living with Luke's family. I woke up at 6 a.m., old habits. My late husband was an early riser, and I'd grown used to making coffee in the quiet of the dawn. The kitchen was still dark, with only the faint light from the street filtering through the thin curtains. I folded the towels and blankets Sarah had left in the dryer from the night before. Right on schedule. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Until I heard a bedroom door slam shut harder than usual. Then the slap, slap, slap of Sarah's slippers as she marched straight into the kitchen. She was in a silk robe, her hair uncombed. Pillow marks still creasing her cheek, but her eyes looked like they were about to catch fire. I thought something was wrong with the kids or that something was burning on the stove. But no. She stood right there and pointed a finger at me. "You have ruined our lives." I froze. My hands were still holding a half-folded towel. I turned my head. Sarah held up a white piece of paper, the official kind, in front of my face. "What did you tell the clinic?" I frowned. "The clinic about my husband's work, about his income," she bit out each word sharp and clear. Before I could answer, Luke walked out. He stood right behind his wife, shirtless, arms crossed over his chest. He looked at me, but he said nothing. "We're being audited. The welfare office called yesterday. They said a family member reported that Luke has undeclared income." My body went rigid. I thought back to the call from the clinic last week. They'd ask the usual questions, names, who lived in the house, sources of income. I hadn't thought anything of it. I just said, "My son does a few odd jobs, some small repairs for the neighbors, but he's mostly at home because of his back pain." I didn't think it was a secret. I was just telling the truth. I didn't even get a chance to finish my thought before Sarah slammed the paper down on the table. "So you did say it." Simone, Sarah's sister, chose that exact moment to FaceTime. The screen lit up and she didn't wait for an introduction. "What's happening? Has the day finally come?" I saw her face on the screen, half awake, looking like she was eagerly anticipating a drama that had been staged just for her. I didn't answer. I just stood there, my hand clenching the towel. I didn't know. I started, but Sarah cut me off. "You ruin everything, all because of that mouth of yours." Liam appeared then, standing on the landing between the first and second floors. He was wearing a gray hoodie, his hair a mess, one earbud still in. He didn't say anything. He just watched. A look that bothered me more than his mother's screaming. Not because it was accusatory, but because it was uncomprehending, and I had no way to explain. I tried to stay calm. "If something is wrong, I'm happy to call them back and clarify." "I didn't mean to." "Shut up!" Sarah screamed. Luke was still silent. I turned to him for the first time since this all began. "Luke, you know, I would never intentionally." He just shook his head. No words, no defense, not a single word. I felt something crack inside my chest, but I kept my composure. "If you want me to leave," I said. My own voice sounded strange to my ears. "We don't want you to. We don't need you to." "You can't stay here anymore. We have to protect our family," Sarah said, as if I were some stranger who had just broken in through a window. I turned and walked to my room, the small room at the end of the hall next to the laundry machine. A windowless space just big enough for a twin bed, a plastic dresser, and a few boxes of my own things. I didn't cry. I just opened the dresser, folded each sweater, and packed them into an old duffel bag. I grabbed my prescription bottle, some cash I kept hidden in a sewing box, and the small photo album I never showed anyone. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I walked past the living room, past Liam. He was still standing there. He didn't say a word. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I opened the front door. No one stopped me. No one called out. Not a single apology. I packed my things and left. No goodbyes. No tears. But I didn't know it then. This was only the beginning. I rented a small room above a Korean nail salon. It wasn't ideal, but I didn't have many options. They didn't ask a lot of questions, just wanted cash and a form of ID. The room was maybe 80 square feet with a low ceiling, faintly stained walls, and the musty smell of old layered paint. There was a metal bed that creaked every time I turned over a short wooden dresser that leaned to one side and a hot plate plugged into an outlet next to the window. The lock on the door was sticky. I had to use all my strength to turn the key, as if it too didn't want anyone coming or going too often. I moved in that afternoon as the sun was dipping below the rooftops across the street. The nail salon must have closed early because the hallway was empty. I set my bag on the bed and stood there for a long moment, just looking around. Not to inspect, but to accept. That this place with the faint scent of acetone and nail polish seeping up through the floorboards was now where I would live. I didn't cry. There was no clear emotion. Just a profound, unfamiliar quiet. In all my years at Luke's house, I'd never had a moment like this. No sound of Sarah's hairdryer, no loud music from Liam's room, no slap of Simone's slippers on an unannounced visit. I used to think I was used to silence, but I wasn't. I realized I had only been practicing being silent for everyone else's comfort, not my own. I took each item out of my bag and placed it in the lopsided dresser. A few sets of pajamas, old sweaters, the thick socks I always wore in winter, and a handkerchief embroidered with the letter L, a gift from my mother when I first got married. I put my medication in the nightstand drawer and set a bottle of water beside it. On the small windowsill, I placed a photo of me and Liam when he was in elementary school. He was sitting on my lap, a melting ice cream cone dripping onto his shirt. And I was smiling. That night, I made my first packet of instant ramen in years. It was too salty, but I ate every last bite. I sat on the bed, my back against the wall, watching some game show on the small TV propped against the opposite wall. People were guessing words, laughing loudly. I just listened for the sake of the noise. The next morning I woke up at 6 a.m. as always, though there was no reason to. I stood for a moment in the tiny kitchenette, then made coffee with a cheap machine I'd borrowed from the landlady. It gurgled like an old car about to die. The weak coffee aroma filled the room. I sat there sipping it slowly, listening to the sounds from below the nail salon door, opening the chatter of voices in a language I didn't understand, and the faint beat of upbeat K-pop music coming through the floor. I didn't know why I felt so calm. Maybe because after so many years of living without a space that was truly my own, I no longer had to be on guard. I didn't have to disappear every morning. I didn't have to clean up messes I didn't make. I didn't have to hear things like, "Mom, don't put my things away. Linda, you should just leave the dishes, I'll get to them. You're so loud, you make noise every single morning." Even though I knew they never really intended to do the dishes, they just wanted me to stop existing. Every morning I walked to the grocery store 3 blocks away and bought milk, eggs, sandwich bread, and sometimes a small package of vegetables. The cashier always gave me a curious look, probably because I didn't look like anyone else in this neighborhood, old, alone, and dressed like I'd just wandered out of a thrift store. I ate a light lunch. For dinner, I'd have some ramen or toast turning on the TV, but not really watching. I didn't call anyone. No one called me. I started writing a few lines in a notebook each night, how much I spent that day, what the weather was like if anything unusual happened. I had no clear purpose, just writing to keep my mind from drifting away. Some nights I'd stare at the picture of Liam for a long time. He was so grown up now, 17 this year, almost as tall as his father, thick hair always hidden under a hoodie. He was quiet but polite. He didn't hug me every day, but whenever he passed my room, he'd give a soft knock on the doorframe. He wouldn't say anything. It was just to let me know he saw me. That was all, but I missed it terribly. A week later, I was going through the pockets of Luke's old jean jacket, one I'd grabbed by chance when I left. I was about to put it in a donation bag, but when I checked the inside pocket, I found a piece of paper folded into a small square. It was a printed email. I unfolded it. The subject line was the name of the clinic I had called. The sender was Luke himself. The date was 2 weeks before the day I left. The subject, income clarification, urgent. I read each line slowly. There was no mistaking it. He had been the one to confirm with the clinic that there was undeclared side income. He knew beforehand. He had even proactively clarified his file to avoid a cross-check. I sat there stunned into silence. I don't know how long I sat. The sun was high in the sky outside my window. The sounds from the nail salon had shifted to the loud chatter and towel snapping of end-of-day cleanup, but I was still sitting there, the paper resting on my lap. I remembered the look in Luke's eyes as Sarah was kicking me out. The slight nod, the way he avoided my gaze as if he were ashamed, not because he'd done something wrong, but because he was afraid I was about to discover the truth. I used to think I was the one who had caused all the trouble. I used to feel so guilty I couldn't sleep. Now I understood I didn't destroy that family. I just spoke the truth that Luke had been trying to hide. I folded the paper and tucked it into my notebook. That evening I ate a slice of toast and drank a glass of water. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I didn't scream or call anyone to vent. I just felt light. Not because the truth was out, but because finally I no longer had to carry a guilt that wasn't mine. I wasn't the one who pushed their family into trouble. They had just used me as one last excuse to avoid taking responsibility. But that excuse was gone now, and they would have to figure out how to live without it. I'm not a person who shocks easily. At my age, I thought I was used to being ignored, used to disappointment, even betrayal. But the feeling of holding that printed email from my own son's outbox, an email he had proactively sent to the clinic, stating he had extra income and was ready to cooperate to explain it, that feeling was unlike anything I had ever experienced. He knew, all along. He was the one who started it all. And I was just the one who happened to tell the truth, the one who was pushed forward like a sacrificial pawn to save the king. I read that email 3 times in one afternoon. Each time I felt a little more foolish for believing, for protecting, for thinking that my son, no matter how misguided, wouldn't let his own mother take the fall like that. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just folded the paper and tucked it into the notebook where I tracked my daily expenses. Then I got up, put on my coat, and walked to the nearby grocery store. The late winter wind in this town had a way of cutting at your face. Kids in hoodies were walking home from school, kicking at the slushy, melting snow on the sidewalks. The old women I'd see at the market were bundled deep in their scarves, pushing their carts slowly. I'd nod at them, they'd nod back, and we'd go our separate ways. It was a very American kind of loneliness. Everyone busy living in their own world, polite but distant. I went into the familiar store and picked out a carton of milk. For the first time in years, I didn't get the 2% low-fat that Sarah forced the whole family to drink. I chose the whole milk, the one in the dark blue carton that I used to love when I lived alone. Also, for the first time, I bought brown bread instead of the whole grain kind Luke claimed was good for the gut, but which I found dry and tasteless. I craved the rich, nutty flavor I'd eaten my whole childhood. On the way back, I walked slowly. I had no reason to hurry. No one was waiting for me to cook dinner. No one was telling me to reheat their food. There were no slippers kicked off in the middle of the kitchen floor. No hand towel draped over a chair. There was no one left for me to take care of. It was strange how that feeling, which at first felt like emptiness, was beginning to transform into something else, peace. Not a happy kind of peace, but the kind of peace you only feel when you know for certain you have nothing left to lose. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Still the simple things spent $5.60 at the store weather was 43 degrees light wind," and I added one more line. "No one considers me family anymore, but I no longer want to go back to being their unpaid housekeeper." The words were simple, but as I wrote them down, I felt lighter than I had trying to swallow them. I remembered Luke in high school. When his car broke down in the middle of winter, he called me at midnight, his voice shaking from the cold and panic. I drove right over, bringing a thermos of hot tea and his father's coat. I sat in the car with him for nearly an hour, waiting for the tow truck, telling him silly stories to keep his mind off it. When Sarah left him that one time, I was the first person he called. Crying, not knowing what to do. I came. I always came. And now he stood there watching his wife throw me out of the house, and he didn't say a word. 3 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. It wasn't Luke. It wasn't Sarah. It was Liam's school. They wanted to know if I knew where Liam was. He'd been absent for 3 days without an excuse. The family couldn't be reached. I was silent for a few seconds, not because I knew anything, but because my heart suddenly started beating faster. I told them I didn't know that I wasn't living with the family anymore, that Liam was my grandson, but I had no current information. After the call, I sat quietly for nearly half an hour, not out of fear, but because I understood he had witnessed that day. He had seen me being thrown out. He had seen the look in his mother's eyes, and he had seen the look in his father's and Luke's eyes as he did nothing. Liam was the only one in that house who would give a soft knock on my doorframe each morning, even if he didn't come in. He didn't say, "I love you, Grandma." He didn't hug me every day, but he let me know I was still seen, that I still existed. I didn't know where he had gone, and I didn't know if I should call anyone. I just knew he had chosen to leave just like I had, and maybe, for the same reason, he just couldn't take it anymore. That evening, I made coffee again. This time, it was the instant coffee I liked, not the whole beans Sarah ordered from Amazon. I turned on the TV but paid no attention to the show. I just sat there, mug in hand, looking out the window, which was fogged over from the cold. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need them to admit they were wrong. I just wanted to be left alone. But I knew they wouldn't leave me alone. Because once you step down from the role of scapegoat, the person who created the mess starts to get scared, and they will do anything to make you come back, or to make you disappear as if you never existed. I was folding towels in my room when the phone rang. An unknown number. I hadn't met anyone new lately, so my heart skipped a beat. But I answered anyway. The voice on the other end was a man's slow and clear, Linda Whitaker. "This is Officer Jensen. I need you to come down to the police station if you can. It's regarding your grandson, Liam Whitaker." I sat bolt upright, my hands clutching the half-folded towel. "Is something wrong with Liam?" He didn't answer directly. He just said quietly that a missing person report had been filed, and that the family suspected I might be involved. I sat on the number 7 bus heading downtown, my mind a mess. I couldn't understand why they would think of me. I hadn't seen Liam since the day I left. Not one text, not one call. I didn't blame him. I figured he was just trying to find some stability in the chaos. But now, missing, I thought of the picture on my windowsill. the little boy who sat on my lap with vanilla ice cream on his t-shirt. I wondered where he was now, if he was cold, if anyone was actually looking for him, or if this was all just another performance. The police station was on the corner of Main Street next to the pharmacy and the old post office. It was colder inside than I remembered. The man named Jensen greeted me with a look that was neither friendly nor hostile, the neutral expression of someone used to dealing with messy stories. He led me into a small windowless room. On the table was a recorder and a notepad. On the wall were posters about domestic violence and mental health hotlines. Jensen asked when I had last seen Liam. I answered immediately, about a month ago, the day I left my son's house. He nodded, taking notes. Then he asked, "Have you had any contact with him since?" "No." "Not a single call, not one text. Do you know where he is?" "No." "Have you picked him up from anywhere recently?" "No." "I'm not welcome there anymore." I said it all in a steady voice, but my hands were clasped tightly under the table, sweat starting to form on my palms. I could see it in Jensen's eyes. He was looking for a sign of something. And then he turned on the recorder. We received this audio file from Mrs. Sarah Whitaker, Liam's mother. He played it. I heard my own voice, though it was distorted. "As long as Liam comes back to me, I'll take everything back." I was speechless. I remembered that sentence. I had said it while packing my bag on the day I left. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't an enticement. It was a line, spoken in a moment of heartbreak. A way of talking about losing the only thing I had left, the child who used to knock on my door every morning. I lifted my head. That sentence, it's taken out of context. I didn't say it to lure him away. I stopped. Jensen was still watching me, no longer writing. I swallowed hard, then continued. I said that while I was packing to leave. I was talking to myself. Liam wasn't even in the room. Sarah must have been recording me. He didn't argue. He just tilted his head. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "Positive." He didn't say anything else. He just turned off the machine, placed his hand on the file, and stood up. "We haven't reached any conclusions, but I'd advise you to stay in town for a while." As I walked out of that room, I saw Luke sitting in the waiting area. He looked up when he saw me. His face was gaunt, his coat hanging open despite the cold. His hands were clasped rigid, as if he'd also just been questioned. But his eyes, that look, it was the same. The look of a man who didn't have the courage to say, "Mom, I'm sorry," but was cowardly enough to sit there while someone else did his dirty work for him. I stopped. I didn't greet him, didn't ask him anything. I just looked. And Luke, he turned his face away. Not a word. Not a hint of protest against the fact that his wife had doctored my words, sent them to the police, and accused me of the most terrible thing, luring a child away from home. I walked out of the police station. No one called after me. No one asked if I needed a ride. The wind blew harder as I walked to the bus stop. My tote bag bumped against my hip with each step. I sat on the cold bench watching the traffic go by, thinking about what had just happened. I didn't feel angry, not really. Nor did I feel sad in the way I thought I would. I just felt numb, a cold numbness that spread from my chest down to my stomach. It wasn't from the betrayal, but from the way people could orchestrate everything, taking a stray comment made while packing and turning it into an accusation. I remembered then, as I was folding my clothes, I had only said it as a way to comfort myself, that if my grandson came back to me at least, I'd still have someone to love. But now that very sentence was being used as a knife turned back against me. That night I didn't turn on the TV. I made coffee, sat in the corner of the room with only the dim yellow light from the bedside lamp. I opened my notebook and started a new page. Some things don't have to be screamed to cause pain. The right words with the right tone in the hands of a cruel person can become a deadly weapon. Today I understood why people fear silence, because in the silence, anything can be twisted into whatever they want it to be. I closed the notebook and set it back on the table. I knew this wasn't over. I knew Sarah wasn't done. And Luke, as always, wouldn't stop her. It was a Tuesday. I was arranging some canned goods in my small kitchen cabinet when the phone rang again. Still an unknown number. My heart pounded. Lately, every unknown number felt like something was about to pull me out of the little nest I'd just settled into. This time, the voice on the other end was a woman's. She introduced herself as Deborah, a guidance counselor at Liam's high school. She spoke softly with a slight hesitation. "Mrs. Whitaker, we just wanted you to know that Liam has been found. He's safe. He's staying at a friend's house. His mother has been notified, but it seems he doesn't want to go home." I was silent for a few seconds. Just safe, not going home. To be honest, I wasn't expecting a reunion. I just let out a soft breath as if I'd just released a stone from my chest. Deborah hesitated, then continued, "I felt I should call you, because Liam has spoken to me about you before. He seems to trust you a great deal. You're the only person he mentions with a sense of peace." I gripped the phone tighter. "What did he say?" "Once about 2 months ago. He came into my office, didn't say much. But when I asked if he felt okay at home, Liam said, 'I just wish I could live with my grandma. They're always fighting, and my mom is always yelling at her in front of me.'" I turned my face to the window. The streetlights were on. The light diffused by the frosted glass made everything look distant, like a different place that had nothing to do with me. I knew Sarah had yelled at me in front of him. She never held her tongue, but I never imagined. He remembered that he'd held on to it for so long. "Thank you for calling," I said. "I'm not sure what your situation is with the family, but if you can, I think you're the only person he needs to talk to right now." I hung up my hand, still trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from a vague feeling as if I'd just come full circle, only to realize that some people, no matter how young, know better than anyone who truly loves them. The next morning I gathered my courage and took the number 12 bus north. It was a middle-class neighborhood with the old school I used to drive Liam to sometimes when he was little. Now he took the bus himself. He was nearly as tall as his father, but in my eyes, he was still the little boy who used to hold my hand tightly when we crossed the street. I didn't go to the school. I went to the friend's house where Liam was staying. Deborah had given me the address with a note, "I'm not sure he'll want to see you, but I think you should go." The house was at the end of the block with a white picket fence and an old maple tree in the front yard. The front door was slightly ajar. I could hear soft music from inside and the smell of freshly baked cookies. I stood on the other side of the street. I couldn't bring myself to walk over. Then I saw Liam. He was sitting on the front porch, phone in hand, his legs swinging idly. A light breeze tousled his long brown hair, and I could see it clearly, the weary face of a child who had run out of places to hide. He wasn't smiling, wasn't calling anyone, wasn't texting. But his eyes, even as they stared at the screen, didn't look like a boy who was running away for fun. He looked like me on the day I left my son's house, clutching an old handbag, my heart hollow. I stood there for about 10 minutes. I didn't move closer. I asked myself, should I call his name? Should I approach him? But then I remembered Deborah's words. "You're the one he trusts. Don't push him. Let him choose." And I knew I couldn't save a child by taking away his last choice. I just watched. My hand gripped the strap of my bag, my legs trembling slightly. I used to think I was the only one in that family who was hurting. I thought I was the outcast, the one used as a scapegoat. But today, standing across from this porch, watching a 17-year-old boy sit in silence with a distant look in his eyes, I knew I wasn't alone, and I wasn't the only one who needed to be saved. I turned my back. I walked away slowly, not wanting Liam to know I had ever been there. I didn't need him to know I was worried. I just needed him to feel at peace long enough to stop running. That night, I didn't turn on the lights in my room as usual. I made a pot of tea instead of coffee and wrote a few lines. Some children seem to be loved because they have parents, a house, a car, but no one teaches them that love isn't control. It isn't yelling or blaming or pretending. There are children like Liam who don't need much just to be with someone who makes them feel safe, without judgment, without scolding, without playing the part of a perfect family. I don't need to win Liam over to my side. I just need him to know if one day there's no place left for him, I'm still here. Tomorrow, I would go to the Legal Aid Center, not to sue anyone, but to ask, can a grandmother file for temporary guardianship if a child truly needs a place to stay and a person to trust? I still remember the feeling in my chest that morning, like someone was poking me with a cold fingernail. It didn't hurt, it was just a dull ache, but it was constant. Liam hadn't come home. Everyone else was silent. The police had paused their investigation now that he was confirmed to be safe. And me, I sat quietly in my small rented room, my hand on the scratched wooden table, my eyes on the picture of him smiling, while my heart began to sense something more. Not just emotion, but the scent of a scheme. It all started with an appointment at the bank. I wanted to check the ownership status of the old house, the one I had lived in for nearly 10 years with Luke's family. My share in that house came from my late husband's life insurance policy. At the time, I hadn't kept it for myself. I put it toward the house so the kids could have a stable place to live. I brought my old passbook and the original documents. The woman handling my file was about my age with her blonde hair tied back neatly, and she spoke in a soft voice. She examined the papers, typed my name into the system, and then tilted her head. Mrs. Whitaker, have you recently given anyone power of attorney to act on your behalf? I looked at her, pausing for a second. No, no one at all. Why? She frowned, typing something else on her keyboard. Then she turned the monitor so I could see. Right under my name in the property ownership section was a note. Request for verification of owner's competency, pending review by legal representative Sarah Whitaker. I sat there for a few seconds. Sarah, not Luke, not a lawyer. Sarah, my son's wife. The woman who had kicked me out of my home like an old, worn-out housekeeper. I asked, can they do that? I never signed anything. The bank employee explained if a family member has evidence to suggest a property owner is no longer capable of managing their own assets, they can petition the court for an evaluation. In the meantime, they can ask the bank to freeze the right to transfer ownership. I laughed, not a happy laugh, a bitter one. They didn't just want me to leave. They wanted to erase me from the deed, from anything legal that could protect me, from my own name on the house my husband had left behind, and how, by proving I was incompetent. I returned to my room, my hand still clutching the paper folder the bank had given me. I sat down, opened my notebook, folded the paper into a small square, and tucked it between the pages from the day before. And I thought maybe it was time to check on the old life insurance policy my husband left me, the one I had left untouched a rainy day fund for later. I called the insurance company. After a few security questions, they confirmed the account was still active, no withdrawals had been made, but the current contingent beneficiary, Sarah Whitaker. I went silent. I couldn't remember when I had put her name down. It might have been a temporary entry when I filled out the paperwork years ago. At the time, I thought, well, a daughter-in-law is family. If anything happens, she can divide it for Liam later. I never thought I would need to change it. I never thought I would be pushed out of my own home with no standing at all. Now I knew. They had been planning this, not just for a day, for a long time. While I was cooking in the kitchen, while I was clearing their plates, while I was folding the kids' laundry, they were planning to remove me from their lives and from the paperwork. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I sat alone in the yellow lamplight, my hand resting on my notebook, which had grown several pages thicker. I wrote, I'm not angry at them for their scheme. I'm angry at myself for giving them the opportunity. I used to think, if I was good, if I was patient, I would be appreciated. But patience only makes it easier for them to erase your name. I let them erase me from the very things I helped build. The next morning, I walked to a small law office near the community center. I wasn't rich, I didn't have great assets, but I had the right to know what I could do, and I wasn't going to let them take everything. I told my story to a lawyer in her 40s named Marissa. She listened without interrupting, just nodding and taking notes. When I got to the part about the insurance policy and the request to change the house's ownership, she stopped writing. Have you ever been sent for a psychological evaluation? I shook my head. Never. And I'm perfectly fine. She looked at me for a few seconds, then nodded. I believe you, but we still need to get that in writing. If they try to push you into some diagnosis, I need your prior medical records to counter it. I nodded. She continued, the best thing to do is be proactive. We'll send a written demand to halt all transfers and request a voluntary competency evaluation conducted by an independent doctor. Don't let them play the first card. I looked at her, this stranger I didn't know, and I felt, for the first time in months, someone was on my side without needing me to cook for them, clean for them, or do them a favor first. I left the law office while the sky was still bright. The wind was light but cold. The sun hung at an angle, not offering much warmth, but its light was clear. I stood there, my hand on my purse, and I knew I would not stay silent. Not for the house, not for the money, but for my name. The name of the woman who had raised their family. The name of the person they wanted to erase as if she had never existed. I didn't know if I would win, but I knew this: I would not let them rewrite the story while I was still alive to tell it. I was toasting a slice of bread when I heard a knock at the door. It wasn't loud or hurried, but it was deliberate. Not the mailman, not a neighbor. No one here knocked like that. Polite people rang the bell and familiar people just called your name through the door. I wiped my hands on a towel and went to open it. Standing before me were Sarah and Luke. Sarah wore a long beige coat, her hair pulled back in a high ponytail, her lipstick fresh. Luke was looking down, his hands stuffed in his pockets. No greeting, no smile. I stood silently in the doorway. Can we talk for a minute? Sarah asked, her voice trying to sound soft. But I had lived with her long enough to know that soft voice usually came with something dirty. I didn't invite them in. I just stepped halfway to the side. There are no extra chairs. If you want to talk, you can stand right here. Luke looked up at me. His eyes were red, maybe from crying, maybe from a sleepless night, but I didn't ask. I was no longer responsible for asking after either of them. Liam is sick. Luke's voice trembled. He needs his mother. He needs you. I looked him straight in the eye. What kind of sick Sarah was, silent. Luke glanced at his wife. Sarah's lips tightened, then twisted into a smirk. He's not eating, not sleeping. He has a constant cough and trouble breathing. You know that's not normal for my son. I looked at them both, then nodded. And so you came here to drag me back, or to take the boy? Luke shook his head. Not take him. It's just, you should be with him. He needs you. Hearing that, I felt something was wrong. It was too easy. I knew Sarah. She never needed me. She only ever used me. If she was here today, speaking civilly, there had to be something else behind it. I stared at her. Did Liam say he wants me to come back? Sarah crossed her arms. He's a child. He doesn't know what's good for him. But if you insist on keeping him, we will consider reporting you for luring a minor away from his family. We might not rule out kidnapping either. The moment those words left her mouth, I knew this was the real reason they were here. Luke said nothing, but I saw his hands clench inside his pockets. He knew that was going too far, but he let his wife say it for him. He chose silence like always. I took a deep breath. I didn't take Liam. My grandson came on his own, and he's old enough to know where he feels safe. Sarah took a step forward, her voice hardening. You have no right to him. You are not his guardian. If you don't hand him over, we will sue. I took a step back, opened the door wider, and pointed outside. Then go ahead and sue. But for now, I'm asking you both to leave my doorway. This is my home, not a stage for your drama. Sarah opened her mouth to say something else, but Luke put a hand on her arm. They looked at me, then turned and walked away. I left the door open, watching them walk down the hall and down the stairs. At the top of the staircase, Luke turned back. Just for a second. But that one look said it all. He knew everything. He knew his wife was staging this. He knew his mother didn't deserve this. But he chose to walk away with Sarah. I wasn't angry. I was just sad to witness one more time that cowardice is its own form of betrayal. I closed the door. I turned the key twice. Then I poured myself a glass of water, not to quench my thirst, but to give my hands something to do while my mind fought to stay calm. I sat down, opened my notebook, and added a few more lines to the bottom of yesterday's page. They didn't come because they were worried about Liam. They came because they knew they were losing control. They thought I was weak. They forgot I've survived worse than this. The next time they come back, they'd better bring a court order, not a fake voice. I closed the notebook and set it on the table. That night, I didn't sleep early. I didn't feel the same rage I had when I was first kicked out. I just felt very clear that family ties are not an excuse for abuse, and that if I didn't protect myself, no one else would. The day I walked into the legal aid office, it was freezing. The wind slipped past my collar, but my hands held the folder of documents tightly, as if letting go would mean I had nothing left to hold on to. I waited for about 15 minutes. A few other older people were scattered around the waiting room, mostly silent. Each of them clutched a folder, their faces all sharing the same expression, tired, patient, and somehow familiar, as if all of us had been overlooked and were only now learning how to speak up. My name was called. The lawyer who saw me was a young woman, maybe 35, named Marissa. She wore a thick gray wool blazer, minimal makeup, and a thin silver chain with a small stone. I told her everything. I didn't leave anything out. I gave her the original audio recording, which I'd managed to recover from a backup on an old phone stored in the cloud. Thankfully, I still had access. In the full minute-long clip, I had clearly said, I don't know if I'm even considered family here anymore. But if the boy wants to come to me, my door is open. I don't want to take anything back. I just want someone who doesn't see me as a burden. But Sarah had cut it down to just, as long as Liam comes back to me, I'll take everything back. I also showed her the text message Sarah had sent me over a year ago, where she'd bluntly said that if I knew what was good for me, I should transfer the house into their names to build a nest for the next generation. Finally, there was a printed copy of the letter from the school counselor, the woman who had called me. In it, she stated clearly, Liam has told me on multiple occasions that he wishes he could live with his grandmother. He feels pressured and stressed whenever he has to be at home and is often worried about his emotional safety. Marissa went through each page carefully, reading and taking notes. She didn't say much, but when I told her about Sarah's threat to report me for kidnapping her, eyes sharpened. They haven't sued you yet, but they're backing you into a corner. The best way to get out of a defensive position is to go on the offensive. I nodded. She looked me straight in the eye and said, I will help you file for temporary guardianship. You have just cause. You have evidence, and I believe you are doing the right thing. I sat in silence for a few seconds after she said that. It had probably been a very long time since I'd heard someone tell me I was doing the right thing. 3 weeks later, the hearing took place. It was a small-town courthouse. No vaulted ceilings like in the movies, No crowd of spectators or press. Just a square room with old wooden benches, the varnish peeling. The clerk was a white woman older than me who spoke like she was reading a prescription. The judge was a middle-aged woman with a few gray streaks in her hair and thick-rimmed glasses. I wore a simple gray suit and a pair of old leather shoes with scuff marks on the toes. No makeup, no earrings. I wasn't there to make an impression. I was there to tell the truth. Sarah came, alone. Luke was not with her. She wore a power suit. Her hair was straightened, high heels. She carried a red document folder. I didn't greet her. She didn't look at me. The hearing began. Marissa presented the case succinctly. My living situation being forced from my home, the evidence of the doctored recording. She presented the text messages, the counselor's letter, and affirmed that I was seeking temporary guardianship not to steal custody, but to protect a child who lacked a stable home. Sarah countered by repeating the same old story that I was unstable, that I mumbled strange things to myself, that I had threatened to take Liam far away if they didn't give back what was mine. She put on a whole performance, crying, her hands trembling, as she spoke of her fear at the thought of her son being indoctrinated by a grandmother who was isolated and mentally unwell. The judge cut her off. "Do you have any medical evidence to support your claim?" Sarah went silent. "Is there a police report?" Sarah shook her head. "Has any psychiatrist ever issued a diagnosis regarding Mrs. Whitaker's condition?" Sarah looked down, her voice a whisper. "No." The judge's expression didn't change. She just nodded, then looked at me. I stood up. I hadn't prepared a speech. I just spoke as I always did. I'm not here to fight over anything. I'm here because that boy was the only one in that house who still remembered who I was, who still saw me as a person. I don't want to teach him to choose sides. I just want him to be able to live without being afraid that one day he'll be pushed out just like they did to me. The room was silent for a few seconds. The judge looked down and wrote something. Then she spoke, her voice low and steady. "The court grants the request for temporary guardianship. Linda Whitaker is granted guardianship of her grandson, Liam Whitaker, for a period of 90 days effective today." I don't remember how I got out of the courtroom. I just remember the sunlight outside was brighter than I expected. I had to squint. And when I opened my eyes again, I saw Liam standing in the hallway. He wasn't wearing a hoodie. He was in a white button-down shirt and jeans. His face was tense, his eyes red, but he stood up straight. He wasn't smiling. He just looked at me and took a step forward. And then he hugged me. I heard him whisper in my ear, "You're the only place I feel safe." I didn't answer. I didn't break down sobbing like they do on TV. I just squeezed his back gently and said one simple thing I know. That was all. And for the first time in months, I exhaled slow and soft, as if finally I had put a piece of my heart back where it belonged. I was folding laundry in my room when I heard a knock on the door. Not fast, not frantic, but firm enough to make me stop. I went to open it, and I saw Luke. He stood there coatless, his face gaunt, his hair a mess, as if he'd just come from a hospital. His hands were empty. His eyes were slightly swollen. Up close, I could see the stubble around his mouth. He kept his hands deep in his pockets as if he didn't know what else to do with them. Sarah wasn't with him. Before I could ask, he spoke. "Mom." Just one word, then he fell silent. His throat seemed to catch on something. I opened the door wider, but I didn't invite him in. I still stood in the entryway as if instinct wouldn't let anyone in too easily after everything that had happened. "What is it?" I asked, my voice even. Luke glanced around the worn hallway, then peered inside where the kettle was starting to whistle. I didn't think things would go this far. I was wrong, Mom." I said nothing. I just looked. He couldn't meet my eyes, as if he was afraid to see what he had ignored for so long, the face of the mother who had stood alone outside his front door in the freezing cold. He continued, "I didn't know Sarah would take it so far. I thought it was just anger. But after the hearing, after Liam refused to come home, he shook his head and sighed. Everything fell apart. And I know I let her control me for too long." I still said nothing. My mind flashed back to the image of Luke standing behind his wife the day I was kicked out silent. Then the image of him in the police station hallway when Sarah presented the doctored recording. He just stared at the floor, not protesting. He didn't side with people because he believed they were right. He sided with them because he was afraid of upsetting them. He chose easy, not right. I looked past him away to avoid touching his too-late apology. "Can you forgive me?" Luke asked, his voice hoarse. I took a slow breath. Forgiveness is my choice to make. I paused for a few seconds, but I no longer have the trust to go back. His face paled. He nodded, not arguing, not begging. I didn't hug him. I didn't pat his shoulder. I didn't untangle him from his guilt like I had all those times before. I just said, "I'm glad you came, but I am no longer the one who will bow her head just to be allowed to stay." He lowered his head again. He stood there a moment longer as if waiting for something, then turned and walked away. I watched him go, not seeing him off, not closing the door right away. Some roads, people have to walk out of on their own 2 feet. Liam had been in the kitchen the whole time. I knew he heard everything. The little room had no soundproofing. Luke's voice had been clear. When I went back to the kitchen, Liam was washing a glass. He didn't look at me. I didn't say anything. I knew he needed time to process what he'd just witnessed. There was no anger. There were no tears. Just a deep quiet. The next morning I woke up as usual. But Liam wasn't in his room. On the table was a folded piece of paper placed neatly under an empty water glass. I opened it. His handwriting slanted, written with the black pen from my tin box. "Grandma." I sat down holding the note, my eyes fixed on the space between the lines. I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel betrayed. I just felt that he was doing what I had long hoped Luke would do, seeking the truth for himself, without waiting for someone to tell him, without following someone else's lead. I made a cup of coffee, the kind I liked. Then I opened my notebook and wrote a short line. "Some children grow up by daring to step out of a safe embrace, but there will always be an embrace waiting for them to return once they know who to love and who to trust." I closed the notebook, and I waited, not for him to come back right away, but for the day he would realize that real love isn't the loudest thing in the room. It's the thing that's still there when everything else has gone. I still remember the sky that day was overcast, the wind light, but sharp enough to make you pull your collar tight. No rain, but the gray clouds looked like they were about to weep. I brought a bouquet of white chrysanthemums, the kind my husband used to like. The cemetery was only a few 100 yards from the bus stop, but the path was steep and the gravel crunched under my shoes, forcing me to walk slowly. This wasn't my first time visiting his grave, but it was the first time I had come after everything, after being kicked out by my son, after being slandered, seen as a burden, and after the very grandson I loved most had also left me, even if it was only for a short time. The rows of headstones stretched out before me, some covered in moss. I walked past each one as if walking through the years that had passed. Finally, I stopped in front of a small gray granite marker engraved with my husband's name, Robert E. Whitaker, 1952-2007. He was a man of few words, but he was always there when I needed him. When I gave birth to our son, he was the one who sat outside the delivery room for 13 hours without leaving. When my mother passed away, he quietly bought the bouquet of flowers I didn't even know I needed. And when he died from a stroke, I thought my life had ended with him. I bent down, placed the flowers at the base of the headstone, and brushed away a few dry leaves. As I was about to stand up, I saw Liam. He was standing on the other side of the path, holding an old photograph. I recognized it. It was a family picture from Thanksgiving the year Liam turned 10. I was wearing a chestnut-colored sweater. Luke had his arm around Sarah, and Liam stood between them with an awkward smile. My head was tilted slightly, as if I was both smiling and checking to see if anyone had blinked. Liam looked at me unhurried. I gave a small nod, a quiet greeting. He walked over and sat down on the stone bench next to the grave. I sat down beside him. No one spoke for a few minutes, just the sound of leaves rustling overhead. The world seemed to stand still. No words were needed. Just being there was enough. I didn't ask him where he had been the last few days. I didn't ask what he said to his father. I didn't need the details. I just needed to know he was back. He held the photo, turning it over in his hands, then set it on his lap. "Grandma." His voice was hoarse from the cold. I thought I hated my dad. But really, I'm just hurt that he didn't know how to stand up for me. For you. I looked at the boy. No, not a boy anymore. He was grown. His face was leaner, his shoulders broader, but his eyes were still the same as when he was little, when he'd come running home crying in my room after being bullied. "You don't have to choose anyone, Liam," I said softly. "I just want you to be true to yourself." He turned to me, his eyes welling up. "Dad's not a bad person. He's just weak." I nodded. "Yes," I replied, "just like I was weak for many years. The only difference is I learned how to stand up." He was silent. Then he rested his head on my shoulder. It wasn't a tight embrace, not a dramatic breakdown. He just leaned on me, gently, just enough for me to feel that my heart was no longer as hollow as it had been. We sat a while longer. I told him a few old stories about his grandfather, about the time he got lost and ended up in the next state while trying to go to the grocery store, about how he used to make coffee so weak I had to remake it every morning without him ever knowing. Liam let out a soft laugh. I didn't talk about Sarah. I didn't mention Luke. Not because I was trying to avoid it, but because I knew some things a boy has to figure out for himself. We left the cemetery as it was getting dark. Liam held my hand, not tightly, but with a realness to it. His hand was almost twice the size of mine now, but he still held it like he did when he was little, the big hand protecting the small one. On the bus back to my neighborhood, he leaned his head against the window. I sat beside him, still clutching my old tote bag. "Hey, Grandma," he said quietly. "I don't want to go back to that house, but I don't know where I'm supposed to be." I turned to him, my gaze direct. "You don't have to know right away. We just need a place to start. My little room. It's not big, it's not beautiful, but it's always here for you, whenever you want." He nodded. That night I made a small pot of chicken soup. Not many ingredients, just potatoes, carrots, and some smoked chicken I'd bought on sale. Liam broke bread into his bowl and ate 2 helpings. We didn't talk about the future. We didn't discuss the guardianship. We just ate together, in a warm silence. I washed his old clothes and hung them to dry near the small space heater. He took the folded blanket from the chair and made a bed for himself in the corner of the room. When I turned off the light, he spoke from the darkness. "I know nothing is certain right now, but I feel safe here." I replied softly, my eyes closed. "That's enough." The next morning I woke up first. The sky was not yet bright. I made coffee, watching the light seep through the crack in the door. I opened my notebook and wrote one last line on yesterday's page. "We don't have much, but we have enough. A small roof, a working stove, a place to come home to. And for the first time in years, I feel like I belong somewhere." If you're still here listening to these final words, then maybe you've been someone like me. You've sacrificed. You've held your tongue. You've stayed silent for so long, you've forgotten the sound of your own voice. I used to believe that if I was good enough, if I gave enough, others would see it. But the truth is, even in the warmest of homes, the coldest indifference can exist. You can be the one who cleans up everything, both the dishes and the messes in other people's hearts, and still be seen as a nuisance. You can love an entire family and still be the first one pushed out the door. I'm not telling this story for pity. I'm telling it because there are so many women like me, older, quiet, forgotten, living with the feeling that they are no longer anyone at all. You don't have to wait until you're betrayed to realize your own worth. You don't have to become strong overnight. You just have to start with one small step. Know that love should not always have to come with endurance, and that sometimes walking away isn't about breaking a family. It's about saving yourself. I used to think if I leave, I'll lose everything. But it turns out, only when I left a place where love no longer lived did I begin to get back the things that truly belonged to me. I don't have any grand advice. I only have one small wish. If you see yourself in this story today, please don't let your heart continue to suffer alone. You deserve to be seen, to be respected, to be heard. If there is one thing you wish you could have told a younger version of yourself, what would it be? Or if you've ever felt abandoned by the very people you loved, please share it in the comments. Not just for me, but for all the other women sitting on the other side of the screen just like you. Who knows, maybe your story will be the light that guides someone else home. Thank you for being here. I'm Linda. I'm no longer perfect, but I am myself again.